American Meadows is on a mission to make your yard better with meadowscaping. Goodbye traditional turf lawn. Hello thriving yard that's better for you, better for your community, and makes the world a better place. From low-growing microclover to boldly colourful wildflowers, American Meadows has the products and advice you need to succeed. Visit us at americanmeadows.com and use promo code Let's Argue to save 20% on plants, seeds, and bulbs. American Meadows. Meadowscaping makes it better.
Hello, greetings, and how do you do? Welcome to another episode of Let's Argue About Plants, the podcast for people who love plants.
But not always the same ones. I'm Carol Collins. I'm associate editor at Fine Gardening Magazine.
I'm Danielle Sherry. I'm the executive editor. You guys know us. You welcome us to your breakfast table or into your car or maybe out in the yard while you're gardening. I'm a huge podcast listener when I'm gardening. What about you, Carol?
Absolutely. Not this one. No.
Not this one. Yeah, no. We definitely don't want to hear our own voices, but well, welcome guys and happy fall to y'all. We are kicking off the new season, the fall season, the cooler season, if you will. Cooler weather has moved in here in New England where we are podcasting from. So to kick it off, we want to talk about amazing native plants for fall. Carol, this is your wheelhouse, baby. Shine like the star you are.
I've got a few.
She's got more than a few. I probably should have made us do both her lists. So I'll just do 4 of Carol's plants and she'll do 4 of her other plants. But yeah, I was surprised, and I actually had a good time doing this, and I prompted my list by going back through my photo reel in my phone, just to figure out, hey, last year in September, October, what was I really hot to trot taking pictures of? And go figure, several natives popped up in there because, man, we're really blessed here on the Eastern Seaboard to get some great native plants that put on amazing fall color, that bloom in fall. What was your criteria for narrowing things down, Carol?
Well, I was trying to find ones I hadn't covered before on the podcast, because there are a lot of native plants that look good over a long season, and they are also good in fall. But yeah, that, and just does it look great at the end of the season, sort of after summer is done and going into not necessarily things that last through the frost, but some of them do, and some of them look great long after the frost. So
100%. 100%. I was also trying to find things that weren't just shrubs or trees, because that was difficult. I mean, those are really, in my mind, in my garden and in the area that in the native woodland area, those really do shine in the fall for me. So trying to find something that wasn't a woody. And now I'm looking at my list. Oh yeah, I got one. All right, so kick us off. What was what hopped to your mind first when you thought of fall natives? All right, what should I pick?
So I thought that good old Joe Pye weed, I don't think I've covered this one, and I'm not sure if this one has been covered on the podcast. Seems like that one of those plants, everybody knows it. Why would we talk about it? But I love Joe Pye weed. That's Eutrochium purpureum, and it used to be Eupatorium, right? But now it's Eutrochium purpureum. Zones 4 to 9, native to Eastern and Central North America, so a good swath of the United States and Southern Canada. It grows best in full sun, but it will take partial shade, and it likes average to moist, well-drained soil. A lot of these eutrochiums are wetland plants. This one does a little better in a normal garden setting, but it does appreciate consistently moist soil. Not that I give it consistently moist soil through any action of mine, but it does like it if it can get it. But failing that, a good amount of mulch will help keep the soil just a steady moisture level, which is, I think, really the main criteria for this plant. I started my plant from seed, and that was probably 10 years ago. And it has been going for 10 years with really no help from me. It's currently, for the past 7 or 8 years, has been out next to the mailbox in the hell strip, right next to the road. And in dry years, it doesn't get quite as tall, but it comes through okay. But it normally will get 5 to 7 feet tall, 3 or 4 feet wide. It's deer resistant, but not deer proof. So occasionally, especially in early summer, when it's pushing a lot of nice, delicious new growth, the deer will come and sort of chomp the top off from it. And it's a bit like the Chelsea chop that I don't
I was
have
going to say,
myself.
they're helping you out.
They do. And when they do that, the plant is noticeably more compact. The flowers are more down at eye level, like 5.5 feet. But yeah, I think it's just a very pretty plant. I think it is good for the wildlife. I'm not exactly wild about the flower color, sort of a soft lavendery, pinky mauve color. What makes it work is that it has these gorgeous reddish purple stems, especially around the leaf nodes, but the stems are the color. Like that's what the color I'm going for with this plant. So it's that the reddish purple stems, and then when the flower buds start in very late summer, they start out like whitish, pinkish white. And I think the stems and the flower buds look amazing together. And then the flowers are fine, and the pollinators love them. The monarch butterflies that are migrating through are just like, ooh, delicious nectar. So I have no objection to the flowers. It's just not my favorite part of the plant. And it blooms over a long season from late summer into early autumn. And then after the flowers finish, they make a seed head that's also equally attractive, and they will stay standing as long as you let them stay standing. It's not a flopper, unless I'm guessing if you had it in too much shade, it might get floppy and splay out in the center. So that hasn't been a problem for me since it's been in full sun. I don't know. It's a cool architectural plant, and actually native to our area, unlike some of the other North American native plants that I use that are from other parts of the country. This one really is, you can find it in the wetlands around here. So I think that's cool too.
Ironically, my mailbox is on the edge of our wetlands, and I have a beautiful stand of it right now that's just like putting on a show. And I've got a ton of swallowtail butterflies that every time I go to get the mail, I'm noticing. And it's funny because it's kind of like down an embankment culvert area. So the plant is probably topping out at 6-7 feet tall, but the blossoms are at eye level because it's in a hole and next to our mailbox, and it just looks great. So yeah, Joe Pye weed's amazing. And there are, if you can't do a 6 to 7 foot tall plant, there's plenty of nativars that have been developed that are smaller, and one is adorable, little name Little Joe, and Little Joe is a great plant too.
Yes, definitely. I don't have that one, but I think that would be fun to do, like a big brother, little brother kind of thing with the Joe Pye weed and Little Joe.
I like it. Kind of like twins, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito sitting next to each other. That would be fun. All right. So the first thing that popped up in my photo reel was I was, skimming, and I went, whoa, wow, cool. That's a bright yellow. What was that plant? And it was northern spice bush. So that's a Lindera benozen, zones 4 to 9, native to central and eastern U.S. So, kind of like throw a line down the center of North America, and it's going to be, the eastern half of that. This is normally a gem that we talk about, and I believe we have before on the podcast. But when it comes to spring, because it's a beautiful spring bloomer. It's kind of a multi-stem shrub that has silvery bark to it. And it's one of those amazing shrubs that blooms straight out of the naked stems in spring. So you get these puffy yellow flowers that are covering this multi-stem shrub, and it's really attractive. It kind of looks a lot like Cornus moss, even has that same look about it. The pollinators go bananas. So we talk about it all the time in spring, but darn, it gets some really great fall color. In fall, those longer kind of oval green leaves that it swathes itself with, it's kind of nondescript in the summer, to be quite frank. After the spring season is over and those blooms go away, it gets a really beautiful foliage, which is nice. But then as soon as those first couple of cool nights set in, this plant just lights itself on fire with yellow. And it's just a pure, clear, beautiful yellow fall color. And it's funny because depending on where you have it positioned as far as its exposure, it will start turning yellow on the portion of the plant that faces the most sun first. So sometimes you have this like kind of like almost ombre effect on one shrub where it's like bright yellow and then kind of chartreuse. And then there's a deviation line of, oh no, I'm still green over here. So it's really, really cool. This is not a teeny tiny. This can get 6 to 12 feet tall and wide. In areas where it's got leaner soil and is in a bit more shade, it'll stay on the smaller end of that, in the 6 to 8 foot range. But if you're going to put this in full sun and it's got some adequate moisture, still well drained though, make sure you're going to get a shrub that's 12 feet tall and wide. But you know what? Easily pruned back, easily shaped up if you don't want something that's that big. I already mentioned those silver stems. I find them pretty attractive. I think that it's a color that's a bit brighter and more shimmery than a lot of the other, multi-stem shrubs out there. It kind of reminds me of Amelanchier, the shadblow, in a way. It has that same kind of silvery gray bark to it, which is really pretty. Partial shade is really a jam, but it will take full sun, as I said, into full shade actually, and it tolerates heavy shade if that's all you have. I don't have clay soil, but apparently it will tolerate clay soil. It will obviously tolerate wet feet. And I learned it's also black walnut tolerant. So if you want to make this an understory tree to your juglans, any of the juglin family, it will still thrive in that location, which I know a lot of you listeners out there have talked to us about. What the heck do I plant under a black walnut tree? Well, here you go. Northern spice bush. And not to be forgotten is that it is a critical native and host plant for the spice bush swallowtail butterfly. It's you will see some of the leaves will get some holes in it in early spring and into early summer. That's totally fine. You know that plant is doing its job and it is really supporting that species because it is a critical host plant for that butterfly. So yeah, I mean, Northern Spice Bush, it's really, it puts on a show early in the season, puts on a show late in the season, and then just kind of sits back and drinks a cocktail during the summer, which I kind of feel like that's what I do too. So maybe that's why I like this shrub. All right, we are on the native train. Boop, boop. What's the next stop, Carol?
This is one that grows in the woods near my house, but not in my garden. But I discovered because I thought, oh, I should do that one that's up on the hill. And I looked it up, Pearly Everlasting, which is Anaphyllus margaritacea. And it
Say
is
that 3 times fast.
Oh my goodness. And I'm not at all sure I got that species name right. Margaritacea. I think that's it. Anyway, Pearly Everlasting is what it goes by with its friends and family. This is a native that is native to nearly all of the United States except for the Southeast, all of the Western and Rocky Mountain states, parts of northern Mexico, parts of southern Canada. This has got the biggest native range of any of the plants that I found for this episode. And it is a really, really cool looking plant that I think would be just fantastic in the garden. So it gets 1 to 3 feet tall, 1 to 2 feet wide. It likes full sun to partial shade, really more mainly sun though. Average to moderately moist, well-drained soil. It prefers somewhat dry and sandy conditions, which right on. That is what I have. So that's fantastic for me. And it will tolerate poor nutrient deficient soil. So if that's your situation, this is a good option for you. It's got this nice upright clumping habit, and it has narrow foliage with white woolly hairs all over it. So from a distance, it looks white or silver or silvery green. And in late summer, it puts on clusters of small blooms that are encased in white bracts. And these are sort of a crispy straw-like bract. So unlike petals of a white flower, they last for a really long time, well into the fall. And when I came across this, it was maybe October or November of last year. From a distance, it looks like it's still in flower, but inside the bracts are fluffy little seeds. So it's just got a cool look that lasts a long time.
Hence its common name.
Hence its common name, pearly everlasting. And it also the everlasting is because people will cut it and hang it up to dry. And it makes a great dried flower. You put it in a wreath, you put it in a dried bouquet, and that would look great with your fall arrangements. In spring, this plant is a larval host to the American lady butterfly. That's Vanessa virginianus. No, that's not virginiensis, but the American lady butterfly. And it's just, so it's a good wildlife plant. And I think it looks fantastic with, green or other colors because it just sort of pops out. The whole plant is this whitish color. So I don't know. I think I'm not going to bother the ones in the woods. I will buy this from a legitimate plant source. And that's what we should all be doing. Do not go out, if something catches your eye in the woods, that's where it belongs. So
yeah,
I'm going to be a good girl. I know collecting, but definitely this is pretty widely available. And I think you can even, if you want to try growing it from seed, I think you can find the seeds for sale too. So pearly everlasting, that's on my wish list. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I think this is a cool one.
Very cool. And it just sounds like, man, get a little bit of sun on it. It must just sparkle just because of the, kind of that silvery hairs on it. Just seems like, man, with a little bit of backlight, that would be absolutely stunning.
I agree. Absolutely. The one thing you just can't do is put it in shade. It just won't do as well. But,
Yeah. Well, one thing that you can put in shade is my next plant, which is, all right, I'm not going to rest. Listen to me, listeners. I am not going to rest until each and every single one of you incorporates a vaccinium blueberry into your ornamental beds. There is a blueberry for everyone, regardless of where you live. All right, well, maybe the desert, okay? I'm going to give you a pass, Southern Arizona. You don't have to have a blueberry in your beds, but everybody else in the country should have a vaccinium of some sort in their beds because blueberries are stunning plants, regardless of whether or not you like the fruit or not. They are just a stunning ornamental plant that should be in every single garden design and plan for multitude of reasons. Today, I'm going to talk about the low bush blueberry, which is Vaccinium angustifolium, and that's zones 2 to 8. So this is the bad boy that you see up on the cliffs of Maine, as they're spilling off into the sea. You'll see this plant. It has a very wide native range. So it's native in most of eastern and central Canada. It's native to all of the northeast United States. It's native in Delaware, West Virginia, Ohio, Illinois, and into Iowa. So this has a pretty big swath. Now, this is a little guy. You don't have to make a big commitment to this. This isn't a 6 foot by 6 foot shrub. This isn't a tall blueberry. This is 6 inches to 2 feet tall and wide. Now, depending on how much sun you give it, is going to result in how big of a plant this gets. You put it in deep, dark shade, dense shade, this isn't going to get very tall. It's almost going to be a ground cover blueberry. And at higher elevations, you can expect it to be shorter too. So if you are on a mountainside in Maine, this is going to be a shorter plant, which you probably see it all the time when you're hiking through the woods. But just like any other blueberry, most blueberries, it's got reddish gray twiggy stems, which I think are very cool, kind of muscular, a little straggly looking. I love it. I think it's got true character. It looks like a bonsai where all the leaves fell off of it. Then green to blue, glaucous, shiny leaves come out in early spring. They're small, but they're very beautiful. Then obviously it gets that tasty little fruit. Now, low bush blueberry, let's be honest here. They're tiny. They're like, like little pearls, teeny tiny little pearls of fruit. And it takes a lot of effort to harvest a small amount. But I will say that having sampled a lot of different blueberries in my day, they're the most flavorful of the blueberries, these low bush blueberries, which you can imagine because this isn't a giant shrub of a blueberry. Every single wildlife on the planet likes to eat them. You've got the rabbits, you've got the bears, you've got any sort of, bird life that you've got out there. Love, love, love these shrubs. So you're going to be competing with those guys. But if you can get out there and even just get a cup of them to incorporate into blueberry pancakes in the morning, it's well worth the effort because it has a truly intense blueberry flavor. But the reason I'm talking about this low bush blueberry is because the fall color is bar none. It is stunning. As soon as we get some cooler temperatures, those blue-green leaves turn a brilliant scarlet red. If you see, this will over time colonize. This plant will slowly colonize. If you see a swath of this together, it looks like the forest is on fire. It is so, so beautiful. In my garden, it makes a great, I'm going to call it, a companion plant because it behaves. I have very lean soil. It's in full sun. But because of that lean soil, it just kind of stays about 8 to 10 inches tall and weaves its way in between a lot of my other shrubs. And in fall, it just lights up the landscape, which is so spectacular. Eventually that scarlet red transitions to a darker maroon color, and then it is deciduous. It will lose most of its leaves in winter. I didn't even talk about the lovely spring white bell-like flowers that it gets on the stems. The pollinators go bananas. One of my favorite things in the world is to try and see some of the native bees trying to shove their chubby little bodies up into those white bell flowers. It's the best. This is a good front of the border plant if you're going to use it in a garden setting. It's something that is, obviously native to a woodland environment, but really does translate well into the garden. Full sun to partial shade, I already talked about that, but I think the biggest thing is making sure you've got acidic soil is really its jam. So you really need to make sure that the area that you've got it has been amended and or naturally has acidic soil. But guys, plant blueberries. They're just spectacular. Even if you don't eat the fruit, they're spectacular. All right, Carol, 2 good perennials. Very amazing. Any shrubs or trees on your list, or are we sticking to the herbaceous perennials?
No, I figured I should try to do at least one shrub. And so I do have one shrub, and it's one we've talked about cultivars of this species before. I don't know if we talked about the straight species, which I think is just a great, great garden plant. Oak leaf hydrangea. I feel like I do not see people growing the straight species of oak leaf hydrangea nearly often enough. It is native to the southeastern United States, so it's really not native to our part of the country, but it grows just fine here. This is Hydrangea curcifolia, zones 5 to 9. And it gets, I think maybe the reason people don't grow it is they think it gets too big, but it gets 4 to 8 feet tall. I have definitely seen larger specimens. The ones at Mount Cuba Center are huge. They're maybe 20 feet tall. They are also very, very old. They've been around for, they're probably 40 or 50 years old at least. And so it will eventually get large, but you can keep that under control. If you've got it in a spot where you don't have quite as much space, you can keep it reined into that 4 to 8 feet tall and wide. And I love its foliage. Its foliage is gorgeous, huge, like, the size of your face, these big oak-shaped leaves. They look good all summer. They've got a great sort of leathery looking texture, white on the back side, which is really neat. When the wind blows, you see a little bit of the slippage showing or something, little white shows. And then, it does flower in the late summer. The flowers go from white to pink, so you get that color as the season comes to the end. And then, you get the fall color, which is incredible. It's probably one of the most colorful trees or shrubs on my entire property. It does red, there's a little gold in there maybe a little blue, a little purple, all mixed together, all changing almost daily. I find myself going out there. I have it next to the deck, so I can sort of get a good look at it every day. The one caveat, it is best in partial shade. It can burn in too much sun. It can flop if it gets too much shade. And it does prefer slightly acidic soil like your blueberry. So if you do not naturally have acidic soils, might not be the plant for you, or you may need to amend. But just, for autumn color alone, this plant is just a standout. And then once the leaves drop, and that it takes a long time, it'll go through frost after frost, and then you have the frost on these gorgeous colored leaves, and then eventually it'll drop its leaves and you'll get that gorgeous exfoliating bark, which is most of the ones in this species have. Just such a cool plant. I wish more people were growing it. I wish I would see it in parks and, in settings where you just need something that takes care of itself and looks great over, pretty much the whole year.
I feel very similarly. I do have some oak leaf hydrangeas. I have some cultivars, and then I've got a couple of the straight species that are just up on Hospital Hill. And I feel like it would have been a good plant for us didn't we have a topic that was like plants with a presence? I feel like that is truly a plant with a presence. Regardless of what season it is, it always has a presence. And I love that you mentioned the exfoliating bark, because people always come for us when we say, oh, and then the exfoliating bark on the tree or whatever we're talking about. They're like, oh, are you kidding me? You need a magnifying glass. Not with oak leaf hydrangea. I mean, like literally peeling off these red and silvery, kind of cinnamon curls off of it. It's striking. It's gorge. It's really, really gorgeous. So, that might be my vote for best plant of this episode, because that's truly a stunner. That is a stunner. I cheated a little bit with my next one because, all right, we're going to take you behind the velvet curtain, folks, and let you know that we do actually tape a little bit in advance for some of these episodes, especially ones where we're going to be traveling. So we're taping this a few weeks before, well, maybe like 2 weeks before this is actually going to release. So right now in my garden, Clethra, summer sweet, Clethra annifolia is looking absolutely stunning. I mean, as far as a native, a late summer, early fall plant is concerned, it is just gorgeous. It's zones 3 to 9. It is native. Clethra annifolia is native to Eastern and Southern North America. It has right now these small little bottle brush like flowers that are white. Some of them get like a little slight variation of pink to them. That is completely covering this shrub that's 3 to 6 feet tall and wide. The straight species in my garden gets pretty sizable. It's up there after a few years, about 6 feet tall and wide. It's a big boy. But those flowers just are sweetly fragranced, and I understand why 24/7 it seemingly is covered with pollinators. The pollinators are just going absolutely bananas. Insects of all kinds. But really, I threw it on this list not for those flowers, which can continue into fall, especially in cooler regions of its native range. In fall, these really beautiful kind of ovate leaves that it has with a lot of texture to them, they turn bright yellow, and then they transition from that acid yellow to a golden, deep, very, sunset yellow color. And the shrub just looks absolutely stunning with that. It's got a silvery kind of nondescript stem color to it. And but really, that fall color is beautiful. So really, as far as like the end of the season between the blooms that show up late and also that late fall color, it just really is a lovely, lovely plant. Um, the cool thing about the flowers is that they persist afterwards with these kind of dark taupe seed pods. And those seed pods set against the dark yellow goldeny foliage is just really cool. And the birds continue then to feast on those seed pods. So you'll kind of look off into the corner and it'll look like the shrub's alive, but it's really just, the native raw, different songbirds that are just kind of getting busy on that shrub. I think it's really, really cool that, this is a shrub that they have made so many nativars off of. So if you are somebody who says, I don't like white flowers, well, then there's a cultivar called Ruby Spice, which is really this dark pink blossom. If you're somebody who's like, oh, I can't do something that's 6 feet tall and wide, there's now a lot of different dwarf varieties of this shrub that you can go for. So all these different nativars have kind of cleaved off of this straight species. So there's a summer sweet out there for everyone. And you just want to make sure that you're putting it in full sun to partial shade. And it does need moist soil. So this is something that would benefit from an area maybe at the bottom of a hill or where there's like a native downspout from your house. That's really where you want to position this shrub. But it's spectacular. I couldn't help myself. I actually did put a photo in the show notes of the pollinators. There's like 6 different like pollinators and insects on this one blossom, and that's what I had to put in the show notes because you know what fall color looks like. You don't need another picture of that. Carol, I mean, I'm doing pretty good with my natives here. I'm trying to keep up with you, but I still feel like, man, you've had some good ones on your list. What are you going to bring it on home with?
I'm going to bring it home with one that's got a rock and roll name. It's iron butterfly ironweed.
Wow. Ozzy Osbourne is somewhere in the universe. He just got a tingle on the back of his neck.
It's a cool plant. It's got a cool name. What can I say? It's Vernonia lettermanii, iron butterfly, and it is hardy from zones 4 to 9, so huge hardiness range. I like the big tall ironweeds. I think they're amazing. Great for the back of the border. This is not that. This is a cute little polite sized ironweed. It gets just a couple feet tall and wide. It's got fine thread-like foliage, which I think is also different than some of the other ironweeds, which have big beefy green leaves. It's got pretty frilly little finely cut leaves. The straight species for lettermanii is native to Arkansas. And so it's, if you can think about what its natural habitat would be like, it likes dry, rocky sites. And one of the sources I was reading said that it can even be occasionally inundated, but in general, it likes average to dry soil. Too much shade, too much rich soil, it's going to flop. It's not going to look as good. So really, this is one that likes it lean, dry. That's perfect for a lot of us to like have a spot like that. It has a really nice habit when it's happy. It's densely branched, it's mounding. And so, until late summer, you're going to have just a nice little mound of foliage that looks cool with other things. And you may say to yourself, what is that? And then in late summer to mid-fall, it has these gorgeous, fringy looking little violet reddish flowers. And the butterflies go nuts for it. The hummingbirds love it. It is deer resistant, and for me, that has proven to be true. I am not 100% sure if it is vole resistant. I started with 3 plants. I am down to 1. And the only thing,
voles?
I think the voles may have done an underground attack on the 2 that there's one that is sort of limping along. The other one is gone without a trace. And I do blame the voles. I'm really not sure what else it could be, but it is deer resistant. The deer have never touched it. It's great for a xeric garden. It's great for a rock garden. If you want to do sort of the North American cottage garden thing, it would be great for that. Just a fun little plant. And because of its small size, you can sort of fit it in with other things. And what I really like is this color looks so good I have a little goldenrod that's near it that's about the same height, and I have some blue asters nearby. So, this color is a good counterpoint for the blues and purples and yellows that you get sort of at the end of the season in the fall. It's just an unusual color that time of year, I think.
That sounds like a beautiful little combination. And sometimes I was at the Chicago Botanic Garden, Richard Hockey, the plant evaluator there who runs the trials, did a Vernonia trial years ago. And I got fooled. I thought that this plant was an Amsonia. From a distance, I thought it was threadleaf. I thought it was Amsonia hubrichtii because it's kind of a doppelganger to that plant, foliage-wise at least.
Yes, the foliage, that's a good comparison. It looks a lot like the threadleaf Amsonias. Yeah, and then you get the surprise of the violet colored flowers that are definitely look nothing like an Amsonia and do not happen at the same time at all. So it's cool. I like this one. It was an impulse by one of our authors, Irvin Etienne from Indianapolis, was doing a talk. He mentioned this. This was at the Perennial Plant Association, one of their gatherings. I went outside. They had it for sale in the little sales tent, and that's where I bought 3 of them.
Right. So, well, there you go. So you can blame Irvin for the credit card bill that month, at least,
That's Irvin's fault.
Yes. And that's so nice because I think a lot of people think about Vernonia and ironweeds and a lot of the native ones as being so tall and so beefy. And not every garden has the space and the real estate to give up for those. So this is a great alternative for that. All right. So I'm going to end with a tree. I feel like we live in New England. If we're going to talk about fall natives, we got to have something, we got to throw a sugar maple on there or something along those lines. But I decided to go with a tree that I have a love-hate relationship with. So maybe this isn't a solid ringing endorsement, but it really is worthy of mention. And that's sassafras. So it's sassafras albidium, zones 4 to 9, and definitely native to Eastern North America. So up and down the Eastern seaboard and into, kind of the middle of the country-ish. The reason I have a love-hate relationship, this is a very cool tree. I mean, it's got a cool look to it. It's considered a small tree at 30 to 50 feet tall and wide. But I mean, in the grand scheme of trees, that is pretty undersized. It doesn't get as wide as it does tall. We'll put it that way. And it's full sun to partial shade, and it likes well-drained soil. It really doesn't, it's drought tolerant once it's established, and will tolerate lean soils as well. The leaves come in 3 different forms, which is so cool to me. I just think wow, maybe it's like me. It can't decide what it wants to be when it grows up. So, you've got an oval leaf on the tree, you've got a mitten shaped leaf on the tree, and then you have a 3-lobed kind of, pseudo glove on the tree as well, which I just think is so stinking cool. The thing that kind of gets me with this tree is that it suckers. So it will create colonies around its base. So if you want something that's going to be super well behaved in, the corner of your garden, you're going to have to be on sucker patrol pretty regularly. Each year, you're going to have to snip back any of the areas where it's trying to colonize and throw up some of its cousins left, right, and center. I don't think it's a tree for a pristine garden setting. Let me say that. But however, where I have a native stand of it and have actually transplanted some of its suckering cousins is on the woodland edge. So it makes a really nice transition from where I've got my, more curated ornamental garden to where it then transitions into the woodland. It is a perfect plant for that. So in fall, there is nothing like this tree. And I'm going to say that there is nothing, no maple can hold a candle, no native maple, Acer rubrum, anything can hold a candle to the color of a sassafras tree. It lights up. First, it starts off with, oh, okay, I'm going to be red. And then it decides, no, I'm going to be yellow. And then it decides, no, I'm going to be orange. So you get this Technicolor Dreamcoat effect on these huge leaves because each one of those, mitten, oval, glove, leaf is large. It's about the size of, a woman's hand. And it's just spectacular. It glows. It holds on to that color and those leaves for a really long period of time. This is one of the last trees to actually drop its leaves in fall for me, which is just spectacular. I also love in spring, it does get these kind of racemes of greenish yellow flowers to it. It's pretty early in spring when it blooms, and it really makes the pollinators so happy. You'll hear this from a distance, and once you get closer to the sassafras tree, you notice that it's completely covered with some of those like early parasitic wasps and such, which is really kind of fun. I learned that oil from the roots of the sassafras were used to flavor root beer back in the day. Back when root beer actually tasted like root beer, that was what they used as a natural flavoring, which is kind of cool. And you can kind of get that same effect by crushing the leaves. If you crush the leaves, they do smell like root beer. Personally, I think they smell like the cereal Fruit Loops. To me, it's the Fruit Loop tree because that's what it smells like to me. But again, great for a woodland edge, just a spectacular fall foliage tree and really a large zonal range too, from 4 to 9. That's a really large swath of the country that could grow sassafras, and I highly recommend it. And now, because everything sounds better with a British accent, here's Peter to talk to us about plants, to prove that he actually does know a little something about plants.
Hello, loyal listeners, and happy autumn to you all. As you know, it's generally my role on this esteemed programme to regale you with all things not plant-related. I consider my role to be one similar to that of a refreshing breeze on a hot summer eve. Give you a little something different to lighten the mood, if you will. But today, I will not do that. I will instead talk to you about two of my favourite native plants for fall, from my native land, the UK. I can't let Carol and Danielle have all the fun. First up is field maple, Acer campestre, zones 5 to 8. Also known as hedge maple, this is a nice ornamental tree with an oval crown. It is the UK's only native maple, widespread in England and Wales, within areas that sport highly alkaline soils. This tree has fresh green new shoots, inconspicuous green spring flowers, and a buttery yellow autumn colour. Now, I know it doesn't hold a candle to the fall colour of North American native red maples, but it is a noteworthy specimen all the same. Field maple makes a fine hedgerow tree as well, growing upwards of 40 feet tall over time. My second entry is golden male fern, Dryopteris affinis, zone 6 to 8. With a name like that, you pretty much know what to expect with this handsome fella. This is a bold, impressive fern, featuring large upright fronds with yellowish scales along the midrib. It grows best in shade and tolerates drought once established. Found over the whole of the British Isles, usually in deciduous woods, when temps begin to cool in fall, the foliage transitions to a bright chartreuse, then golden hue, before dying back completely in winter. At 3 feet tall and wide, This is no shrinking violet either. And now you know the shocking truth. I'm a fairly accomplished gardener. I just know my lane on this podcast, and for the most part, like to stick to it. But I'm sure the ladies will forgive me for pulling over at the rest stop on the M8. Just this once.
I mean, Peter really had us fooled for several years here that he didn't really know that much about plants, but oh no, not to be outdone. He does. He is a secret plantophile.
I think maybe a lot of people from England are. Don't you think? Like it sort of runs in the genes or something?
I think you're probably right. Now, I don't think, our expert is not from England, but he is from a different state. Let's see what Brent Horvath from the Midwest has to say about fall natives. Oh, I'm excited because he's such an awesome plant breeder.
Hi, my name's Brent Horvath, and I own Intrinsic Perennial Gardens, a wholesale perennial nursery in Hebron, Illinois. I'm here to discuss two of my favorite plants for fall color. The first choice is Amsonia, also known as Blue Star. Blue Star has lots of different species and varieties. Hubrichtii is probably the most well-known for both fall color and because it was perennial plant of the year previously. There are lots of species. Illustrious is another one that has very nice yellow fall color, bright golden yellow fall color. In the case of Hubrichtii, it has nice needle-like foliage. Light blue flowers is typical on the majority of the species. There is a hybrid called Blue Ice that has slightly more blue flowers, as does Cabernet Montana Stormcloud from Proven Winners. Some of the hybrids are kind of intermediate in foliage, so they're not quite thin needle-like and they're not quite wide, maybe 3/4 to a 1/2 inch wide, like Cabernet Montana and Illustrious, but are right in the middle. I call them halfway types. In fact, I introduced one called Halfway to Arkansas. It has hybrid vigor. The plant in maturity in perfect conditions can get 5 foot tall by 7 feet wide, but the majority of these plants are kind of 3 foot plus or minus tall and plus or minus wide. And they have great yellow fall color, some kind of bleed into orange or red, but they are great fall color plants and quite substantial in the landscape, almost shrub-like. My second choice is a very adaptable and widely grown plant. It's an ornamental grass called Little Blue Stem, Schizocarium scoparium, and again, there are many different varieties on this plant. Some are 2 to 3 feet tall, some are 4 feet tall, some have green foliage, some have blue, silver foliage. Fall color is typically to the orangish red side, depending on the type. Some leans more towards red on the green varieties, and on the silver varieties, you tend to have highlights of red and purple and sometimes orange on top of those blue or silver foliaged plants. I've introduced a few short ones. One is called Jazz. It is a shorter sport of the blues, which is quite common. The blues tends to be around 3 foot plus, and unless it's in fairly lean soil, then it has a tendency to either flop or open up. But great blue foliage. There are some very substantial ones like Standing Ovation and Sandhill. These have wider foliage and then quite a range of fall color. There are many other varieties, and some are probably more local to your ecotype. but even the species is great. It's native in almost all the lower 48 states, and I would highly recommend you have it in your garden. Thank you.
I was so excited to hear what Brett was going to talk about because I know he's done so much breeding work with Rudbeckias and Amsonias, and oh my gosh, not to mention all the native grasses he's worked with too.
Yes, he is famous in the world of native-ar plants. Yeah, he's like a rock star.
He is, so I just added all those plants to my must-buy in spring of 2024 list. I'm going to be so broke, Carol.
Me too.